Hi, this is Geraldine Orozco, and you're listening to Awaken Nation with Brad Szollose.
A huge shift is taking place on planet Earth. People seem to be waking up. Tired of the way things used to be, they are creating something brand new and changing the world we live in. My name is Brad Szollose, and I get to sit down with the next generation of idea makers, the disruptors, and the game changers. Everyday people, just like you and me, from all over, who are doing amazing things. Welcome to Awakened Nation. I have been excited to get you on the show, and for several reasons. The transformational work that you're doing, the meditation work that you're doing, all that is just incredibly powerful work. And I'd like to introduce our audience to Geraldine Orozco. Geraldine is the founder of Bay Area Meditation and Space Meditation Studio in San Francisco, California. She is also an international speaker, radio host, Pranic, quantum, and Shamanic Energy healer. She is an Akashic Intuitive, psychic meditation expert, Gong Master, collective trauma researcher, and Archetypal social Theorist. That's a mouthful, isn't it? She is currently working on her first book, DNA Origin, and the Hybridization and Ascension Program. On October 14th, 2013, Geraldine experienced a vivid abduction from her home in California, where she recounts being introduced to 8 hybrid children. The next morning, she discovers that she now has powerful hypersensitivity to the human electromagnetic field and an ability to see the multi-dimensional bodies, energetic cords, contracts, and ancestral lineage with manifestations to their earth grid connections. And we're going to go into so much more. Please welcome to the show, Geraldine. Thank you for coming on.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. It's an honor. Thanks for this amazing platform.
You're welcome. So let's dig in. Let's talk about when you woke up. What was that moment? I mean, you were abducted. Take us through that, because this could scare the hell out of anybody, I think. But let us know, what was that like?
Yeah. So in reality, my awakening from beginning to end is really, as it is for most of us, kind of a lifelong process. And when my journey actually began, and I'm going to take you a little bit before that, just so you can understand kind of the overview and context of all of this. 2009, my partner passed away. And I think for me, that was the point where it really took me into the journey of discovering, questioning all things, all reality and everything. I was very blessed, and I am very blessed with a very spiritual family, which is always inspiring us to, question reality, look at different religions. And growing up, I had the opportunity of experiencing and participating in many different kinds of religions. I mean, from Buddhism to Zen to looking at Sufism, Hinduism, even the Muslim religion, and of course Christianity, Catholicism, many different sects from there. And all of that, I believe, was a strong foundation for how I was going to perceive what was going to occur later on in my life. And I think after 2009, when I started to first question everything, I went in to do shamanic training, which called to me because it talked about, it spoke to understanding the physical body, the multidimensional body, understanding, energy, how energy works, how life force is moving through us. And that was fascinating to me. But I didn't take the courses with the focus of being a healer at that point.
Right.
It was just really more education and learning and curiosity. I also had another business that I was started in 2010 that was tremendously life-consuming. And what happened is in 2013, when I had that abduction, and I literally one night, 3:33 in the morning, I wake up, I look at my phone, 3:33, get out of my bed, go to my window to try to figure out what this brilliant light is. My body is paralyzed, and I'm taken out of my room into a craft with 6 tall rays. And, this is paradigm shattering for me, because I haven't been involved in this ET phenomena. I wasn't, none of my religious studies really took me there, because obviously I hadn't gone that far enough to even question that. But it just wasn't in my reality, wasn't in my paradigm. And on board craft, along with a lot of very interesting things that they shared with me, I was introduced to my hybrid children. 8 hybrid children, of which 4 of them were literally introduced to me, and connected with these children. And that was huge. And at that moment, the impact and the connection is so powerful that you really don't even think or question how they came to be. That really, for me, came later. And what happened after this experience is the very next morning, when they left me in my home, I'm upside down at the end of my bed. My bed is open. I'm facing down. So that would never, ever happen. Never has happened. And so, but still I questioned, like, what was that? Was that a dream? Was that what happened? Was I lucid dreaming? Like, how could that be realer than real life? It's an experience that's realer than real life.
Wow.
And I actually hear that with other experiencers, and it's just the best way to explain that. It's just fascinating. And it wasn't until the next Monday that I am faced in front of my client, my meditation client, and my student is sitting next to me, very, perplexed with all kinds of problems that are happening to her, and she's stressed out. And oh my gosh, I can feel absolutely everything she's feeling. I can see her entire multidimensional body. I can see the blockages, the cords. I can see everything. And I mean, at that point, I just nauseous, and I'm like, wow, what happened? Where did this come from? So, that for me was my confirmation of what had happened. And it was a very powerful thing to have to kind of relearn how to be this human who has this hypersensitivity to everything around them. And, it had its ups and downs. And it wasn't, for many years, from 2013 until 2017, when I finally made the decision to take what had happened seriously. Because, I was struggling with myself, struggling with my plans for the future. My business was finally at a successful point, and we were becoming internationally known. And my partner at the time was like, "Don't you dare talk about the ET contact. Don't talk about any of those things with anyone. You're going to look like a crazy person, and focus on the future and the family and all these things." And and I just realized that I really couldn't live these 2 lives. It was important not only to me, but my thing was, if I experienced a process of giving birth somehow to these beings, who else is experiencing such a thing, and why aren't we talking about it? And even if it's a phenomena, like some kind of psychological phenomena, we still need to talk about that, So I got my regression in 2017, and that's when, it was just everything opened up on an even deeper level. I was able to go deep into seeing massive amounts of information about our history through our DNA origins, through history, life seeding on this planet, and understanding that not only were humans participating in a hybridization program, but ourselves are potentially a hybridized species.
Yes.
That's when things got really interesting. And in addition to being able to see the multidimensional body, it was like linking this understanding of ourselves as a human organism in this reality.
That's incredible. This is, for those of you who are listening, this is powerful. A lot of you may be listening and you may have doubts, but I can tell you this. The human race is a race of beings that has amnesia. Maybe this all sounds, out there to some people, but I can tell you this. Your television is giving off not just electromagnetic energy, but it's giving off a bandwidth that actually sends your brain into, I believe it's alpha state. So you almost sit there watching a television and you go to sleep consciously. You're not really awake. And Geraldine is the type of person that has, for lack of a better word, let's say you were zapped by that visitation, that abduction, and now you're activated at the optimum level. So human beings have the potential to be exactly like Geraldine is and operate in the same way, to see things. And I can tell you for myself, slowly I've been waking up. And that's part of the reason why I put this podcast together. I've seen people wake up. I've seen people suddenly gain powers like yours. And even for myself, I now can sense and feel things that I never was able to do before. And this is incredibly powerful. What is going on, Geraldine? And you talk about this. You underwent some very public regressions with Alba Weinman, Barbara Lamb, Misha Johnson, and you were traversing the multi-dimensions of reality, and you were mapping out the structure of the universe, identifying how the soul's DNA plays a vital role in the sustainability of a massive hybridization program. But I want to dig back into where you were just talking about, where you could feel all this, you could sense all this, and you saw what was going on. Tell our listeners a little bit about, and help us connect the diamonds here.
Yes, absolutely. So, it was interesting, and I think it's funny how it's not funny, but obviously it's the beauty of this life is very interesting. I mean, if you look at the history of my life of going through an education of learning how to utilize energy, understanding pranic healing, quantum healing, and shamanic energy training, I mean, it was like the groundwork for what was going to happen. And when I had the activation, it's like I can see everything that they were talking about in those lessons, but even further, even understand multidimensionally how those things are functioning, the mechanisms of the body, of the etheric body. And I understood the structure of the human organism. I understood what it meant to have what we are as consciousness. And so being able to explain that to people, to draw it out part by part, I think is very important, because that allowed me to understand the importance of every moment and of presence. Of course, we hear, the power of now, so on and so forth in our community, but what does that really mean? I mean, from active and physical, you're tying the etheric and the physical together into something that we are now learning how to live, through. And so, I can briefly explain if you'd like, how that consciousness enters.
Sure.
The body too.
I would love to hear that.
Okay. So consider that in this matrix multiverse, the fabric of all things created is infinite consciousness, and how consciousness moves within different organisms. I'm going to refer to this matrix multiverse as an organism, and I'm going to refer as ourselves as humans as an organisms as well, almost as if we are some kind of structure of an organic body, which in a way we are, okay? And everything is modeled in a way where we are fractals of each other, and it's an infinite pattern of fractals that is from down to the cellular molecular level to the larger macrocosmic structure of reality. And what that helps us do, in a way, it simplifies our understanding of how to interact with these things around us. And when consciousness is coming in to a dimension, this three-dimensional reality that we live in, like light shining through a prism, in that same way, it fragments. And what happens is consciousness comes in and it fragments within the body in, of course, creating a rainbow, as you know, of information. And the rainbow is simply frequency. It's just a range of frequency, lower frequency to higher frequency. Now, because of the structure of the universe, not only is the universe moving in a spiral form, which means that time is not linear. It is also functioning on this trajectory of like an axis, which means that everything has multiple dimensions to it. So our human organism that is sustaining this consciousness that is fragmented becomes compartmentalized into certain energy points, vortices within the body that are an accumulation of energy and information. Okay, and this information is magnetically attracted to each other based on its frequency. So within the root chakra, we have specific experiences and programming from past or future. And I'm going to explain that in a second, aspects of ourselves that are there within the chakra system.
Right.
And we access that information through every single experience. Everything that we are being triggered, everything that we're perceiving is kind of being filtered through those filtration systems of the body. So what's interesting about this is that not only are we processing that information based on what's occurring here and now, but the human organism functions like a web. I like to use the analogy of a web, like a spider's web, and we are, let's say, the spider at the center of that web. But connected to us is every single one of these threads that are connecting to fragments of ourselves. I mentioned before the structure of this universe is working in fractals, and that applies also to the way information functions. So the way consciousness is fragmented as it comes into different dimensions, so are we fragmented as consciousness. And depending on the experiences that we undergo, the soul will fragment, especially when it goes through trauma, for example. But also, we hold within our larger organism fragments of ourselves that are simultaneously living in this moment. So there is no timeline, there is no past and future. Everything is more like this spiral or round kind of organism in which fragments of ourselves are aspects that are connected to us. And we have the ability of accessing that information, and we do. This is why we go through regression and we have the experience of having past lives. It's not really past lives. Right. They're fragments of ourselves that are simultaneously becoming conscious through the access of that aspect of ourselves. And so the important thing when it comes to healing the body is understanding that your present moment consists of accessing all of these fragments of yourself, which are opportunities to reintegrate fragments of yourself. And so that's basically what, I was able to literally see, and I see in people when I work with them, is look at this web, take a look at the information that is there, and what's interesting is that when consciousness comes into the physical body, not only does it connect to this physical projection of consciousness, but the physical projection is connected to another network within the three-dimensional timeline, which is your genetic make, your physical body. And that's when we start talking about DNA, because the DNA is basically like a computing system that records all of that information inside an ancestral lineage that connects you to other of your fragments that are living in the network.
Right.
And these networks, these families, these connections are also united and connected through frequency, through resonance. They are organisms that are all sharing a certain lesson, a certain experience that must be kind of worked through as a collective. And this happens as a collective consciousness, as a race, not just in family networks.
And also, when I interject, there's country as well as origin, where your DNA lineage comes from, soul lineage as well. All this is happening all at once.
Country and that part is really part of this physical, this limited physical, dimension. But the origin, I mean, we're talking about even our star seed connections, or what we think are alien aspects of ourselves, because all we're talking about is how consciousness has fragmented in a scale from frequency, higher to lower frequency, and those are manifesting in different races of species. Even humans are in that scale. So, the higher frequencies are, let's say, what we can consider the future. The lower can be the past. And so we access this information, and all of us have that. That's a part of all of us.
Right.
In other words, yeah.
I warned everybody when they get on this show, we're going to go deep. Okay, so for those of you who are following along, consciousness is a particular type of awareness that is independent of the mind. And our existence, it may seem right now like you're in a physical world, and some of the things we're talking about may seem like, whoa, that's truth, but it's like beyond my ability to comprehend. But you are comprehending it, because how many of you have gravitated towards a period of history? How many of you have this gut feeling of emotional pain, and yet you've had nothing happen in this lifetime that you could really say traumatized you? Or let's say you have a physical pain and you've never worked in construction or done anything, but you can't figure out why you have this pain. Part of the reason, and what Geraldine is getting at, is we are operating in all dimensions at all times through all these various connections. We've actually become fragmented, and the only reality we're accessing is the one that we're just accessing with our conscious mind. So thank you for blowing our minds today, Geraldine. So let's continue. This dimension, how do you heal it? How do you help with this?
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up, because I know that these topics seem massive, but I'm the kind of person that I need to look at the bigger picture to be able to make sense of things. I need to understand the mechanisms and how these things work, because without that, everyday practices, spiritual wisdom, like those things don't sometimes seem even further more abstract, and we can't connect, we can't integrate with them. So if we understand how this organism functions, then we can understand why spirituality is speaking to aspects of ourselves, like consciousness, like healing, like being this vital, high vibrational being, right? And the link there is, so I was mentioning we're connected to this network. So what happens? Let's bring it home here. How does that affect us? We are, let's say we're going through our lives. We have a negative coworker in our office who's making us feel really bad, okay, all the time. They're always putting us down. They're always doing these things to make us feel unworthy and whatnot. So there's something that's being triggered there through that experience. And what happens is that we, over time, we become exhausted with having to handle and deal and learn how to manage other people's negative influence on our lives. And what we'll notice is that we look further. This is an example. We start to look at the pattern of these kinds of triggers in our lives. And it's through these triggers that lies the importance of understanding the connections, because we are living through our triggers, which are something that we are pulling not only from what's happening here and now, but we're pulling from the filing system that is something that is occurring on another timeline, or the past, or something that happened to our grandmother, because genetically we are cycling through trauma, cyclical trauma that is literally in our DNA, which is being accessed by the mind, which is being accessed by the brain, by the nervous system, by the endocrine system. The entire body is reacting to those triggers. And of course, as an organism, as an intelligent organism, we pull from the nearest information, and that's what we are acting out. And so, that becomes an issue, because then we fall into these patterns of behavior. And what we don't realize is that these patterns of behavior are things that our mother and our father was dealing with, our great-grandmother, so on and so forth. They are things that are in our families that we are not realizing that we're all kind of working through. And when someone becomes aware of the blockages, these now turn into blockages because we feel blocked. We don't know how to get through them. We don't know how to process this information. We don't even know how to navigate emotionally what we're experiencing. So first, we have to understand our emotions. I like to say we need to meet our emotions because as a society, you were talking about how we've become suppressed. We become suppressed in a way where everything is compartmentalized. And when things are compartmentalized for an organism that is so massively connected to everything around it, it then is unaware of itself, turning into this helpless being that isn't conscious of how to connect or integrate the things that are occurring around them. And that is a very huge issue. It's a very huge issue, and it's a disservice to ourselves as a society. The sooner we become aware of that compartmentalization and how that's occurring for us, not only in our families, but even in our identity as a sex, even in our society, our religion, our cultures, our race, how government is handling things, so on and so forth. All of those things are there are systems that we are applying to how we see ourselves. And so that becomes an issue because the human organism wants to categorize things as good and bad. The reptilian brain wants to categorize things as white and black. And that is not how we are naturally created to function. That creates a separation in our perception. And so when we start to have triggers, we want to say, oh, this is good, this is bad behavior. And so there's a severe, kind of like it's like a blockage that occurs because we're not allowing ourselves to really understand and naturally process what's occurring to us. So what happens over time is that we are then having stagnant programs. These are false programs and false perceptions of ourselves and how to process events. Everything becomes destructive. Everything becomes separate, isolated. And that's an illusion. It's an illusion because the integration of those things, the ability to look at things from a neutral perspective, allows for integration of all things.
Right.
And healing requires accessing those trigger points. And as a human, if you can access that and heal those experiences through this kind of trauma DNA reprogramming, you are literally accessing the fragments of yourself that are in those past timelines in the now. And you not only heal yourself, but you heal your entire network, because this is ancestral grid work, basically. And oftentimes in these sessions, we're looking at ancestors that are connected to your origins, to other countries, and we pull up all of those roots, clean up those cyclical patterns that you're living through, basically.
Wow. Geraldine, how do our guests get a hold of you? Because let us know your website, because this is powerful. If you want to get some healing, if you want to take those ancestral traumas, your family DNA, all the way up to where that trauma began, how do we get a hold of you, Geraldine?
Yeah. GeraldineOrozco.com.
How do you spell that?
It's DERALDINE, last name OROZCO.com.
Nice. Excellent. And also you have a meditation site as well, I believe?
Yeah, my corporate meditation, I teach corporate meditation programs for companies that want to increase wellness in their everyday practice, and it is BayAreaMeditation.com. And you can also visit hybridmother.com for support of the hybridization program if you are a participant in the hybridization program.
Excellent. I'll repeat those for you, and we'll put those in the show notes. It's GeraldineOrozco.com, BayAreaMeditation.com, and HybridMother.com. Let's continue this conversation. I want to get in a little bit deeper. We've talked about the grid. We've talked about the healing. We've talked about soul. And
I always find this fascinating because I have learned that time is cyclical. We can believe in past lives and we can even be regressed and have those open, but everything's all happening at once is really what's happening. But I want to talk about this you talk about 4 different hybridization multiplication programs resulting in 24 hybrid children. And you were in a documentary series about this as well. And also you talk about your most recent experiences involved in military laboratories in the United States. Let's delve into that a little bit now.
Absolutely. So you're asking about the 4 different hybridization program. Is that right?
Yes.
Great. So in 2017, when I got my regression, it's the second regression. I think it's 178 by Alba Weinman. You're welcome to check that out on YouTube. It is a bit graphic, and it goes into the process and the procedures of the hybridization program. And not only that, but I found that I not only had those experiences, but I have been a lifelong abductee since I was 5 years old.
Wow.
And, in these regressions, I go back to my very first abduction when I was 5 years old, or contact or experience, whatever you'd like to call it. It's a lifelong procedure, and depending on which agenda or group of consciousness was interacting with me at that time, it would define the kind of experience that it had, and it also defines the product that was created from the hybridization program. So the 4 different hybridization programs that I was a part of range from what you can consider high frequency, low frequency, in order to define that. But I was a part of a draconian program, reptilian, humanoid, Pleiadian, and military, my lab experience. And each one of them is different in the way that they carry out the procedures of the hybridization program. And that's why I really talk in depth about them, because they really help us as experiencers understand and identify what we're going through. And even then, you got to understand this topic it's very difficult, because we are talking about a couple things. We're talking about consciousness. We're talking about an intelligence that is so far beyond our technology. It's hard for us to grasp. It's hard for us to put into terms, how this is actually occurring. And in reality, our physics and our science limits us tremendously in understanding all of this. When I talk about the kind of procedures that are done, I'll just briefly go through these. For example, in the draconian program, in order to be prepared to be a part of the hybridization program, you will have visitations that involve implantation of technology. And this technology is not only utilized to prepare the body for when you are being extracted into these events, or also to monitor the body, the systems of the body, how things are going, the energetic levels, everything. And so each one of these different agendas has a different way of carrying this program out. The implants that are put in the body are in different parts of the body. They function different. Some are actually physical, some are etheric, so it really just depends. Now, when the first part after the implantation of technology will be the insemination process, which occurs when you're prepared and ready. The physical body is ready. And for me, that occurred when I was 16 years old. So my first implantation occurred when I was actually living in Bolivia. I lived there for 2 years during high school, and the experience was very vivid. They took me into kind of a chair that looked like a dental chair where you sit and the insemination process begins. And the interesting thing about this is that when that happened, the body goes into this state of rejection, a severe rejection. The organism rejects whatever is being implanted in the body. So every time, and this is documented medically for me, that I had an abduction experience in my life, I ended up very ill, or something occurred. And in that particular experience, for example, I ended up with a horrific kind of like a stomach flu, what I thought was a stomach flu. My uncle, who was a doctor at the time, gave me antibiotics to because he thought it was some kind of a bacteria or disease or something.
Right.
And he's like, take these antibiotics. But I ended up having a tremendous allergic reaction to them. And I guess at that point, you're never going to link the dots between being sick and ET contact. It's so far out of the paradigm.
True.
You would never even imagine or fathom that it's a possibility. See? So this kind of event happened several times in my life. And every time I would end up at the hospital with something, which doesn't happen very often because I live a very healthy life, anytime that my cycle would be out of balance, anytime that I would experience a miscarriage, even when I am not partnered with someone, became pregnant during those times.
Right.
These are things that when you go to the doctor, the gynecologist says, you're under a lot of stress, or maybe you want to have a child so much. And I was never the kind of person that was like dying to have children. So a lot of their medical explanations never made sense to me during that time. And you still don't question whether it's ET contact. Never. Right? And so until I got the regression and looked closely at every single one of these experiences, then they started to make sense. Everything made sense. The abductions that were clear, the procedures, the technology that they put into your body. For example, one time they put this bodysuit within the body in order to sustain a certain frequency, because you got to understand these are beings that are out of our dimension. They're beyond our dimension. Right. So the question is, how can they put this organism in your body? Your body would die, with that level of frequency. They create like this kind of insulation within the womb to sustain a certain frequency for the gestation process of the specific fetus, which is a genetically, modified creation, basicay.
Right.
At the time of removal, when they're retrieving the fetus, which usually happens, 3 weeks. The longest time was 3 months for me. Usually we will experience a kind of a miscarriage, but there won't be anything left. There won't be anything within the uterus. So I talk about these things very openly because these are very real things that I have women coming to me that are experiencing this, and how the connection is what's happening psychologically when these things are occurring. I mean, we're having dreams, we're having visions of ETs, and for me, that wasn't even the case for me in my life. I mean, I didn't have those kinds of dreams and experiences that I recall. I just ended up at the hospital the next day.
Right.
That's that. Now let's talk about the MyLab. MyLab happened more recently, and it happened when I was speaking at a conference in Colorado, and I was there with a group of other speakers. We were staying at an Airbnb together in Colorado, in the Colorado Hills, and I wake up at 4 a.m. and my sweater is soaking wet, like my entire chest of the sweater is soaking wet, and I'm screaming. I didn't scream, but yell something out in the middle of the night. And I'm rooming with 2 other people with me, 2 speakers. So embarrassed, I go back to sleep, and it wasn't until Sunday on our trip back that I mentioned to one of them, hey, I'm so sorry, I don't know if I woke you up the other night, I had like this nightmare. And the nightmare was literally that a man in a white coat was coming to me with a large injection to inject into my arm, and that's what I woke up. And I ask her, and I say, hey, do you recall what I was saying, or what do you hear what I said? And for example, she says, oh yes, I just woke up a minute before that, and I heard exactly what you said. And so she tells me what I said was, I'm not alone. I am not the only one. So, it was kind of odd. So we start talking, we start comparing notes, we start talking about our dreams, and it turns out that we were in the exact same environment, exact same dream.
Wow.
And what makes this powerful is that we both got regressions for it. And we were very clear on everything that had happened. It took us to an underground base. I know the location, the department, who's running it, what happened. Then months later, at another conference that I was speaking at, I meet the other person that was rooming in the home with us. And I happened to say hello to her. And I just thought, let me ask her if she saw or felt anything weird that evening. And immediately she's like, oh yes, white van. And I mean, when she said that, you know, it sent chills down my spine, but white van was exactly what we saw. And we were taken out of the Airbnb into a white van, taken to the field, down an elevator, down 24 floors. And both of us, the three of us at that point, had experienced this and were sharing parts and details of it. So how this hybridization program is different is that the procedures is that they are removing, it's like a spinal tap. They're removing spinal fluid, and the DNA that is within the spine is what they utilize to carry out a cloning program, a replication program.
Wow.
And, and it was so painful that I do yoga every day. I couldn't do yoga. I could barely walk because my back was killing me for 2 months after that. I mean, it was horrible. So this is when things become real. You know, they're no longer a fantasy or a dream or an illusion, you know, and this is something that's happened all my life now. So we're bridging the gap between reality and illusion here. And this happens for thousands of people around the world.
Well, I just want to throw this out. I've seen a UFO, and I don't know if mine was alien, but this thing was only 80 feet above my head. So I believe it was the military side of the UFO phenomenon. But people need to know over 300,000 reports happen every single year about someone either seeing a UFO, having contact with a UFO, or being abducted. And even some of the leading scientists like J. Allen Hynek, when he first went into the program, his job was to disprove all of it. He thought it was nonsense. He's a PhD in this. And after years of being in Project Blue Book, he said, there's something going on, and we need to be concerned about it. And the nations of the world, except for one, has revealed all their unidentified flying objects and unidentified submersible objects, phenomena of sightings, abductions, you name it. Even this hybrid program, they've revealed all of it. Hundreds of countries have come forward and done this, except the United States. We still have a blackout here in the United States. And last but not least, there was a high-ranking Air Force female captain who had been, she was part of the hybrid program. She actually had a full belly, was pregnant, and carried almost a full term, and then suddenly the kid's gone. And people want to talk, oh, this is not, hey, this is happening. You need to wake up. We're being treated like cattle here on planet Earth, and people aren't quite, crossing over and saying, oh my goodness, maybe we should pay attention more to this. Geraldine, we're at the end of the show. Oh my goodness, it went so fast. I want to have you on again. A piece of serendipity happened when I reached out to have you on the show. There was a documentary that I accidentally clicked on. I don't know how it came in my feed, and you were in it. What's the name of that documentary?
Oh, I'm not sure. Which documentary is this?
I forget where it was. It was like, Extraordinary, The Seeding.
Extraordinary Seeding, yes. That's the documentary that I'm a part of, yes. It's about the hybridization program.
I couldn't believe it. You're sitting there on the thing, and I'm like, whoa. I want to thank you for the power of what you were talking about. I want to thank you for having the guts to come forward. And once again, everybody can reach out and get you at GeraldineOrozco.com, BayAreaMeditation.com, and HybridMother.com. Please get in touch with her if you've had an abduction, if you would like to have some healing, if you want to take it to another level, because we all have these implants in us and all these different things. And thank you so much for being on today's show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been an honor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Take care, everybody. Thank you.
I want to thank you so much for being a big part of the Awakened Nation movement. This is how you can help me and our extraordinary guests. If you guys enjoyed this episode, please share it out on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And let's grow this movement by word of mouth. Our success will be because of you. Thank you, and see you next week.